Well, good morning. Certainly my pleasure to be here with you this morning to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart and in terms of entrepreneurship and building an ecosystem. When this session was first announced, I got some ribbing from many of you in this audience because it was announced that I was a tech park evangelist or a research park evangelist, and I was amused by that, I've got to say at first, but as I started to look at what an evangelist really is, someone that is passionate about what they believe, someone that hopes to maybe convert you into their way of thinking. When I thought about that relative to the Purdue Research Park, and when I thought about that relative to the research parks that we have served so well through the association, I felt like that was, in fact, a very fitting title. So I'm excited to be here with you today. Hopefully, some of the things that I'll share will help convert you to my way of thinking a little bit. And I'm even hopeful that this will work as well. So this is going to be great this morning, great opportunity to talk. One of the things I would just like to do is welcome you, especially you new members, to an incredible journey that we are part of. We do something that matters in the world. Research parks matter. I think we are the privileged few that get to leverage the assets that are available in our universities, in our federal labs, and what we're doing is we're taking talent, we're taking intellectual property research capacity, and we're converting that into things that really matter. We get to help new ideas transcend the labs, transcend the minds of our students, our researchers, our faculty, to create new technologies. We get to create new jobs. We get to create new opportunities for people, and I think this falls into categories like new services, new ways of business. These are also in critical, life-changing areas like food and water quality, like energy, like healthcare. And we are improving lives not only through those technologies, but through the jobs that we're creating. So welcome, whether you're new or whether you're one of the old members of AURP, welcome to this incredible journey that we are a part of. So one of the things that may be of interest, we just heard a long introduction, maybe a little too long, about Purdue University and the Purdue Research Park. We've been on a sustained trajectory that's been pretty good. We've had parks that we've created throughout the whole state of Indiana. We've got $1 billion that we're pumping into the Indiana's economy. I would tell you that, not only did we add, we've got 4 parks in the state that were established, but we added a 5th park. And so the question for me, I think, was, with that kind of a sustained trajectory over a long number of years and being recognized by groups like AURP, NBIA, IEDC for our excellence, then why is it that we felt the need to make some radical changes within our organization? Because we were already on a great path. But in fact, a lot of people talk about change, and they say things like, disrupt or be disrupted, or that change is the only constant. They say things like you're either growing or you're dying. Even one of my old mentors used to say, Greg, change is inevitable, but thoughtful growth is not. He would say things like that to me. But we were, in fact, doing great things, and we decided that it was time for us to do something incredibly different to take us to a different level, and I'm hoping to share that with you today. This is about continuous improvement. A few years back, many of you participated in a leadership session that we did that kind of focused on some of Jim Collins's work, Good to Great, Built to Last, and we focused on what it means to be a level 5 leader. In those books, he also explains this thing he calls the flywheel. Many of you have read that, and he talks about how you get the initial inertia to get a flywheel moving, and then it picks up, eventually leading to a breakthrough. And I would tell you that in our history at Purdue, we'd had several breakthroughs. When we decided to get big into business incubation, that was a breakthrough. When we decided that we would go statewide with our research park footprint, that was a breakthrough. But I would tell you in the last 5 or 6 years, what we had been doing was just sort of incremental change. And in Collins's work, he says that if you take disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action, that you can put that into that flywheel and that'll lead to some breakthroughs. And even though we were moving fast, even though we were making things happen, we decided to task a wildly talented group of people and give them something new to work on, and that has unleashed them to lead to some breakthroughs, and I'm hoping to share those with you this morning. Now, many of you are David Letterman fans. He retired earlier this year. Now, David Letterman was an Indiana guy. He grew up in Indianapolis, famous for his top 10, right? So AURP is all about applied knowledge. This is about us sharing things that you can actually take with you today and apply in some way. And whether you're an idea right now hoping to create a park, or whether you're a well-established park with thousands of employees, I'm hoping that the top 10 things that we've been doing right now to create a more robust entrepreneurial ecosystem at Purdue will be helpful to you. So let's get started with that. This is a set of not only attitudes but actions that we've been working on at Purdue that are making a huge difference. The first of these is understanding why. When we were out in Tempe, I'm going to move this forward, but when we were out in Tempe, if you wonder if I'm going through some personal change, I would just confirm that, because we're about 2 blocks from Mill Avenue, and a bunch of us decided instead of going out for the evening, Mason actually organized a little TEDx viewing, and we sat out on the veranda and we watched some TEDx videos. One of those videos that we watched was Simon Sinek, and many of you have watched that, and I just wanted to recreate the diagram here that Simon uses in his video where he talks about understanding why. If you want to look that video up, it's called Start With Why. What Simon does for us in a very short listen is he talks about how a lot of organizations behave. In many cases, they start out with what they do, then they tell you how they do it, and they often don't even tell you why they do it, or maybe they don't even completely understand why. He gives us this great example of Apple computers, and what he says is that Apple could just say, hey, we make great computers, our products are beautifully designed, they're simple to use, and they're user-friendly. Would you like to buy one? Then he kind of gives you this, and he tells us that we don't know why, maybe that doesn't compel us to action. What he goes forward then and says is that, in fact, what Apple does is they absolutely start with why, and I'll paraphrase this, but more or less he says something to the effect of, in everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. Then he says, the how. Well, we make products that are beautifully designed. They're simple to use. They're user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Starting with why appeals to people in a different way, because you understand why you're there. Now, I would tell you that we put a lot of focus into this before we started this dramatic change. And the why for us, and the why for you, I hope, is this is about moving life-changing technologies to the marketplace. And I would tell you that that is a drum that we beat every day. This is about moving life-changing technologies to the marketplace. So let's take the Purdue Research Park for a moment. Why? It's about moving life-changing technologies to the marketplace. Well, how? Well, we happen to have a lot of value-added services aimed at companies of all sizes so that they can be part of that. We happen to have a great research park. If we were to go to the Foundry, which you saw the logo there a moment ago, the Foundry is a startup hub. This is an accelerator that we've created to make it easier to start companies. The why? This is about moving technologies to the marketplace. We happen to have a lot of services that are aimed at entrepreneurs of all abilities. We happen to have a great accelerator. Our Office of Tech Commercialization, the Tech Transfer Office at Purdue, has bought completely into this as well. It's about moving our technologies to marketplace. So I won't continue to beat on that, but I would just tell you that understanding why, making that undergird everything that you do, can have a tremendous impact in terms of adding clarity. And we're looking for outcomes that are going to be happier, healthier lives through the technologies that we're moving forward. The second thing shouldn't come as a great surprise, but this is something I'd like to dwell on for a moment, and that is clear metrics. Tom Peters had this right when he wrote In Search of Excellence. This was probably 1982 or 3, one of the best-selling business books of all times. But what he said is, what gets measured gets done. And I would tell you that it goes back to having very clear ideas about what is to be accomplished. So in the Purdue Foundry, this is clearly one line. This is about creating new startups. And if you walk into the Foundry, you'll see dartboards hanging everywhere with the target goal of the startups that we need to create each and every year. If you were to go to the research park understands it is about occupancy and it's about net cash flow. Our Office of Technology Commercialization understands that this is about startups, and they also share that metric with us at the Foundry. That's been interesting because it's brought our teams together. They also know it's about their patents that get issued and the licenses that they do. This is a very public dashboard, and I would just say that not only does this clarify what we do, but in a very crystal clear manner, it also clarifies the things that we don't do. And although at first when we implemented this, it felt kind of onerous because it's hanging over us every day, it gave us the freedom to say no to those things that were not contributing. Number 3, in this particular case, this is about barriers. At breakfast, we were talking about my son, Alex, who's a motorcycle expert. He and I were talking recently about what it takes to make a motorcycle go faster, and presuming you've got two options. You either increase the horsepower or you decrease the mass or decrease the drag. I would tell you that at Purdue, we set out on this new journey that it was about moving our technologies to marketplace, and then we said, where are the points in this system that are not working very well? Where are the barriers? I would tell you that right out of the gate, the place that we attacked first was our Office of Technology Commercialization. I know some of you work in that area, and sometimes this is an area that is much maligned in our institutions because it's seen as a barrier. It's seen as a place that you have some trouble getting through. What we decided that we would do is we would be very, very different in our Office of Tech Commercialization. So the thing that we started out with right out of the gate is we said to all the student body at Purdue, some 40,000 students, we said you own your own intellectual property. That freed the students to become more creative. It freed those students to become more involved. We also then looked to see how we can make the licensing process better. We created express licenses. Everyone knows what the terms are on those express licenses. There's no mystery. There's no black box that's going to happen when you try to go forward and get a license. And so we did that for our faculty, and that's been so successful we're now expanding that on a statewide basis. We also told our faculty that if we decided not to pursue intellectual property protection, we're going to reconvey that to you, and we're going to give you a minimum of 6 months so that you can perfect your own intellectual property if you so choose. That took so much heat out of the system because in many cases, they were getting their technology back late. They didn't have a lot of time to react, and they were blaming our own Office of Tech Commercialization. We took the patent process in-house. That's led to a decreased cost and a vast increase in issuances. When someone wants to license our technology, we actually work with their attorney in a three-way agreement. These things have fundamentally changed the way that people look at the barrier that used to exist as our Office of Tech Commercialization, and they're now perceived as a partner. A couple of other quick examples. We wanted the international population at Purdue to be more involved in entrepreneurship. In fact, Purdue leads the world in terms of the number of international students. So we created a program where we actually supply funding to help change your visa status that would enable and empower you to be involved in a startup. So that was a barrier that we removed. We also realized that although we had great hit rates on our SBIR and our STTR grants, not enough people were submitting grants. We found out that they just didn't have the time. So we hired grant writers that could get involved and help them get those submitted. And ultimately, we found that we had a lack of talent to work with our faculty and our grad students that wanted to create companies. So we reached out to our 400,000 alumni and said, would you help? And over 100 of them said, we will be directly involved in mentoring. And many of them said, if the time is right, I would even be a CEO of one of the companies. The fourth thing that we did was resource alignment. The lighting in this room is great for reading, but if you wanted to cut steel or you wanted to cut through concrete, you'd need to organize that in a way that you could produce a laser beam. And that's something we know a lot about at Purdue. What we chose to do when we created the Foundry is we had looked across Purdue and we said there are a lot of scattered pockets, if you will, scattered beams of light that are trying to help people that are starting things, trying to help people in the entrepreneurship space. But we realized that none of those pieces were working together very effectively. And so what we chose to do is we took 6 of the people from the research park, and these 6 individuals, including myself, were the ones that were coaching our early stage companies. These were the ones that were in the trenches with those early stage companies, and we repurposed them. We moved onto campus. We moved right into the heart of the Entrepreneurship Center so that we could be right there where things were going. We came with a clear understanding of why this was about starting companies and moving technologies to the market, and then we set out to find who would join us. And we went through a number of different areas and we brought those things together. So examples, I mentioned we have a shared metric with the Office of Tech Commercialization. The shared metric on startups really matters because our teams are working together every day. We embedded ourselves in the business college. And that means we're not only teaching classes there. My team is involved in teaching classes on Lean Launchpad and things of that nature. But our companies are taking direct benefit from being projects in classes, taking direct benefit from having MBA students work on their market analysis. We were also able to create a program where we actually empowered 7 different faculty members to be sort of the Pied Pipers for commercialization and for startup activity. And so these individuals, we called them DIFs, which means Deliberate Innovation for Faculty. We empowered these individuals to represent what we're doing in the colleges throughout the Purdue campus. That's led to a tremendous influx of new ideas. We created a graduate track for our grad students so that they could learn entrepreneurship. We looked at all the maker spaces that were available on campus, and most of these were pocketed and siloed, only available to the units that had created them, and we made them available to everyone so that they could be used. I mentioned we told the students they could own their IP. That led to an upswell, which led to something called the Anvil. The Anvil is actually the largest student co-working space in the world right now, and they have vast interest in what they're doing. And so all of these things came together, and I'm telling you, all of this has come together in the last 2 years. That is something that actually has been blowing my mind personally. So beyond the resource alignment, the next thing that we set out to do is to find anyone else that might partner with us. So when you think about partnerships, I'm going to just share how we go about that process with you briefly. And I call this just listening for overlap. So the Venn diagram that I have here is not very complicated, but the listening part of it is something that is a true discipline. When we find someone that says they would like to partner with us, the first thing I want to understand is how are they measured? What do they care about? Is there something that they want and need that I also want, need, and care about? So I'll give you an example. In the case of venture capitalists typically have great knowledge about what it takes to be funded, and they need deal flow. At the Foundry that we created, we had incredible deal flow, but we had a lot of people that were very inexperienced on the financing. Now, we could have arranged for a really great day with that venture capitalist, but instead we arranged for a really great partnership, and we said, look, here's what we'd like to do. We're going to take on an attitude of mi casa es su casa. In other words, our house is your house. Come and hang with us. But we want you to meet with every single client that we're working with. As I stand here, is more than 80 different clients. We want you to meet with them all. And rather than just come in and cherry pick for one day the best and brightest, we want you to meet with each of them and give them your opinion on what it would take for them to get financed. What do they need to do? In the process, you're going to meet the best and brightest. You're going to get your deal flow. But we want to make you part of the team, not just a visitor that pops in for a day. We've taken this kind of a philosophy, and we've done this with prototyping firms. We've done this with a number of companies. Schurz Corporation, for example, hosts an innovation challenge. And they are, in fact, looking for new ideas in the media space. But what I'm hoping that you'll gain from this is that you often get these requests. People want something from you. Can you take that and move beyond just a great day with that individual and move that into a partnership? We've created 40 such partnerships, and I would tell you that when we listen for that overlap and we create a partnership instead of just a one-day event, it's expanding our reach and expanding the capacity that we have to help people within our ecosystem. So number 6, this is actually a bit more of an attitude as much as it is an action. And this is about including the people that we want to reach. And so in this particular area, I would just say it feels so great when you know that you're welcome. And what we've done with that, I mentioned the example of going head on with trying to help the international students in particular get a visa status adjustment so they can participate in entrepreneurship. That very clearly told that group of individuals that we want you. We're in the process right now of launching an incredible program that's going to say the same thing to those women that would like to become involved in entrepreneurship. Those of you who were with us in March heard Karen Griffith-Greiga give an incredible talk about the return on investment for having women in your founding team. Well, Karen's coming to Purdue next week, and she's going to give a great talk on that. And this is going to be the lead-off to us encouraging women, not only at Purdue, but throughout the state, to be more involved in entrepreneurship. But again, this is about inclusion and saying we want you to participate in what we're doing. I got to admit, about 3 years ago, someone in our community said something that just really irritated me. This is a guy who had dropped out of college. He just happened to have a couple of wildly successful tech businesses. And I said, man, you're not involved in anything that we're doing. What's that about? And he said, you know what, Greg? He said, it feels kind of like a walled garden for somebody like me that doesn't have a great academic background. I just don't know how to access the things. And so that actually pierced me pretty hard. And I said, you know what, we're going to make a change on that. What do you need? And he says, well, I'm doing Startup Weekend this fall. And so we began a process where we began to say, what we have as assets are available to the community. Greg Napier, who's here in our team, just recently converted some of the most pristine space you can imagine into co-working space. We said it's okay for that space to be used in different ways because basically it was a really glamorous hallway for a lot of people. And now that's being used as a very active space. And I would just say that people are going to watch what you do more than what you say. And so we've decided that we are going to put programs in place that make people know that we want to include them in this incredible ecosystem that's building in West Lafayette. Somewhat related to this is creating authentic community. Now, in this particular case, this has to do with demonstrating daily genuine care and concern. This is not about what you get from someone. This is about how you can empower them to achieve their dreams. Now, when you were growing up, at least in my case, there were homes that I loved to go hang out in. And I got to tell you, I don't remember if they were nice homes or they weren't. I remember the people there, though. I remember those parents that had kind of that mi casa es su casa attitude. I remember the parents that took an interest in me. I remember the parents that said it was okay for things to get a little bit messy. I remember the parents that gave us a little bit of space for us to do our own creative things. Now, I also remember a few rooms, one of them in the house I grew up in that was totally off limits. And you know which room I'm talking about. It's the one that had plastic runners on the on the floor, and they had covers on the couch. And you knew you weren't allowed in there. I did time for for going into my mom's room of that such to play a little football with a friend one day, and it turned out it was a great place to throw the football around, and I paid a heavy price for that. But when you have those kinds of things that tell you you're off limits, tell you that you really can't be yourself, that is challenging. So what we've done is we've tried to embrace that messy is okay. We've also tried to be genuine in our team. I'm one of the baby boomers in our team. I get that. If I pull my hair back in a man bun and try to slip into some skinny jeans, you are not going to think I'm a hipster, right? I'm a poser at that point. That you know that. I know that. The one thing that I would tell you, though, that has really driven home the fact that we're getting there on this point is that I am suddenly pretty cool with being uninvited to things. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One of my team, young millennial guy on the team, was having a dinner. I wanted to go. I was excited about it. They were going to go to a sushi bar, and he kind of subtly said, I don't know. I'm not really sure that's going to be the right thing to do. I kind of realized all of a sudden he was trying to build authentic community with people that were in his group. And he didn't need the old man there. It would be like me showing up to my son's friends playing football in the yard, and I've got my Peyton Manning jersey on, and I want to be their quarterback. I don't fit in that. It was okay for him to tell me, why don't you hold back on that one? In this women's group that is going forward, I've been uninvited to a couple of things there. I am the biggest cheerleader for this that you will find on the Purdue campus right now, but it was okay for me not to be invited there. Even last week, my own office manager, we were having a gathering with our Office of Tech Commercialization to meet some new people on the team, and she said, hey, do you mind if I run this one today? I said, well, what are you thinking? And she says, well, we want this to be so casual, and I want to make sure that it's that. I think if I do it, it'll actually be better. You know what? She was right. It was better. So I'm just going to tell you, when your staff start to tell you that you're not invited to things, that's a cool place to be because you know that you're empowering them to create authentic community. So those are some things that are going on, and we're finding that people want to be part of a community that is bigger than themselves. Experiments. This is something that I would just tell you, we've adopted an attitude that failure is okay, but inaction certainly is not. It's ironic, the population that we serve are people that experiment every day. The scientific method's defined as experimenting, observing, and then you iterate, and you experiment, and you observe, and then you iterate. When we send someone out into the marketplace as an entrepreneur, we're going to tell them, get your minimally viable product ready and go get it validated. And yet sometimes in our business units and in our programs and in our parks, we don't often think that way. We've got to line up the perfect shot. We've got to make sure that it is exactly right. And I would just tell you that we've adopted an attitude in all of this that it is okay to fail. It's okay to do things and have them not work out. What's not okay is for you to not do things at all. I would tell you that we are celebrating the attempt, and many of the things that are now turning into great programs were at one time just an experiment. I'll give you one example, and that is the Crane Naval Surface Warfare Center down in southern Indiana. We have a huge naval base in Indiana. It's like a federal lab, produces lots of intellectual property, and yet they really didn't have a great mechanism to help their entrepreneurs or to move their technologies to the marketplace. And so we chose to try and experiment with them. We said, we'll market your technology with ours on our website. See how that goes. In fact, we'll take our Foundry team and we'll start helping to coach your entrepreneurs. We'll see how that goes. Pretty informal operation for the first year. Well, now we've taken that to a whole different level because that experiment worked pretty well. We've been working with a jewelry company on a similar type of an experiment. We've been looking for technologies that might help their risk profile. These are experiments that can turn into something special, and I just encourage you to take on an attitude that it's okay if things don't work out, but it's not okay for you to sit and do nothing. Number 9 is something that's kind of guided my entire career at the research park, spanning now 20 years. Call it the 3 questions. The first of these questions is something that I ask every single person when I'm sitting down to lunch with them, if it's a stakeholder or a client, but I'm going to ask them, is there something that we're doing right now that is absolutely making an impact on your company, on your ability to go forward as an entrepreneur? What is that? Because I want to do more of that. The second thing I'm going to ask them is there something that we are not doing right now that's a huge unmet need for you that you could use to go forward and get better? And so that is where we're identifying that second thing. What is it we don't do that would help you? Trying to find those unmet needs. The third is the more subtle question in the group. And in this particular case, what we're going to ask is there something that you see us doing perfectly that you couldn't care less about? Now, here is where the danger zone is. Sometimes you get caught up in a tradition. Sometimes you get caught up in the elegance of something that you're doing, and then you find out it's not making an impact. I'll give you an example of something we recently changed. Years ago, we decided having a softball tournament at the research park would be a great community building opportunity. And in fact, it was the first year. And in fact, it was the second year, and probably the third year. Then all of a sudden, it became uber competitive. We started having ringers showing up at this event. We had guys with eye black on and uniforms, and it was no longer about a community social event. It became, I got to win this tournament, and it became something that it wasn't. So the team decided, let's do a kickball tournament. You know, it turns out there weren't a lot of professional kickball players in our region, and this became a very fun event. Everyone was out of their element. Everyone was having a lot of fun, and we repurposed that to get us back to where we wanted to go. So I would just tell you that these 3 questions are questions that we ask all the time, and I hope that you'll implement those into the things that you're talking about with your companies. So the last item, I started with Jim Collins and the flywheel. I'm going to come back to Jim Collins. This has to do with the bus. You know, I think Collins was right about his comments on getting the right people on the bus. It does start there. In our case, we want people that believe what we believe. We want people that come to us that want to be involved in moving technologies to market. We want people that are passionate about entrepreneurship. So it starts with that. It does start with why. Someone on LinkedIn recently shared something, and they said to me, great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire already motivated people and inspire them. And we've kind of used that as an underpinning when we're looking for that next person that we might add to the bus. You know, one of the things that most of you have talked with Charlie D'Agostino since you've been here. Charlie's our president. He is a huge baseball fan, if you haven't picked that up. If he were here to draft a team right now, he would not draft all catchers. He would not draft all pitchers. He knows that that team would fail. And so I'm going to encourage you to think very deeply about, does the team that you have in place in fact mirror the constituents, the companies, the entrepreneurs, the people that you're hoping to serve? We've been very, very deliberate about that, and I mentioned some of the outcomes, like me being uninvited to things. That's because we have a great mix of millennials, Gen X. We have a great mix of baby boomers in that. We've got a great mix of ethnic diversity. We've got a great mix of men and women in this team, but they all start with a deep passion for what we're doing. I would also just say that there is something terrifying and exhilarating about trusting your rookies. And I'm just curious, I hope that many of you will recognize some of these folks. Who's the little girl? Anyone? Shout it out. Anyone? Boo? I heard Boo. Boo. This is Monsters, Inc. You remember the story of Sully and Mike, and they work for this company that scares little kids for a living. And then they capture those screams, and it's used to power this land that they live in. That's the plot. What's fascinating about it, though, is something that we can learn from Boo. And in this particular story, if you'll remember, Boo doesn't know she's supposed to be afraid of Sully. It's hilarious. He comes in, he's going to scare her, and then he walks back out her door, and she's like on his back, and she doesn't say hardly any words, but I remember her going, "Kitty, kitty." She thinks he's a big cat. She's not afraid of him because she doesn't know she's supposed to be. There's a book out right now by Liz Wiseman that's called Rookie Smarts. And in that particular book, Liz is taking a page from what we heard last night in that creativity session, and she is letting us understand that our rookies, in fact, might not see problems in the same way that we do. And so in the case of Boo, she's not afraid of Sully because she doesn't know she's supposed to be. Many of us have faced a little structure like this that's a gate that's coming and going from parking structures and so forth. There's this great picture. If you were to Google driving around the gate, you'll see this aerial shot of a roadway with one of these across it. But you can clearly see the traffic pattern is everyone just driving around it. I would submit that in some situations, those of you who have sat behind these your whole life might pull up and wait. But our rookies are not even going to see that as an obstacle. So I am encouraging you to empower the rookies on your team because they are taking us places that I didn't know we could go. And I'm very excited about that talent. So with those top 10, I just want to take a moment to let you know in just a few short years, as we led that flywheel into a breakthrough moment, what have been the results? And let me just share those with you briefly. First of all, we have set all-time records for startups. We were at an average of about 8 per year for some decades. 2 years ago, we had 24 startups. Last year, we had 25, and we're going to continue to accelerate our growth in that area. I mentioned that we took our patents in-house. What's been the result of that? We were at a historical average of about 99 a year. We've pushed that to 178. How about licenses? That had been at about 81. We moved that to 131. I will tell you, this has started with not only that question of why, but then what are we going to do about it? And we have really pushed the needle on that. A lot of great things have also happened in our community as a result of removing barriers and encouraging people. This Anvil, largest student co-working space, has been created. We were named Incubator of the Year by NBIA. We've got this thing called Matchbox, which is a community co-working space. All of these are working together. I apologize you can't see the little chart there, but I'll just tell you what's on it. It's showing that Purdue is rated now number 16 in terms of U.S. utility patents. We've moved up dozens of slots on that in just the last 2 years. And just a few months ago, Forbes named our community as number 2 on their list of best communities of our size. So the things that we've implemented are actually having a discernible impact, and it started with why, and those top 10 things that I've shared with you are part of that. And by the way, in our research parks, over 400,000 square feet of space actively under construction, north of $70 million. And we've got a plan that we're working on right now for an additional $1.2 billion of activity on the edge of campus near our newest research park, which is the Aerospace District. We just recently announced our first client there. This has changed our entire university. We are now active. We've got record giving that's happening at the university. And I would tell you that this same idea has pervaded into our working with corporations that want to sponsor research. And we just hit an all-time record there as well, north of $130 million. So these are the things that we're up to, and these are the things that we're working on at Purdue. And just as a concluding set of comments, I'm going to just share with you a little bit of what I am at least thinking about in terms of the future. This is a bit of a word cloud that I put together, and I hope most of these words are things that are in your vocabulary right now. I hope you're thinking about active space. I hope you're thinking about collision zones. I hope you're thinking about curators that are making activities happen. I'm hoping that you're thinking about your relevance in innovation zones. This is our first line of defense to hang on to those millennials. And if we can find meaningful ways for our parks to be involved, we can find meaningful relationships with them as their life cycles change. I'm thinking about a park without walls, not constrained by the real estate, but how we're relevant to the landowners and the other people in our whole region to get them involved. Of course, I'm thinking about millennials and baby boomers. I'm thinking about authentic community, and ultimately leading to the X factors that are going to be the differentiators for us at Purdue. So as I conclude today, I thank you for your attention. And one of the principles that I would also like to share with you, I hope some of you recognize this guy. If you haven't seen a picture like this before, this is a post turtle. And the old maxim goes, if you're driving down the road someday and you see a turtle up on top of a post, well, you can rest assured that that turtle didn't get there by themselves. And I feel a bit like that post turtle. I have an incredible team. Many of them are here, and I hope you'll get a chance to get to know them while you're at the conference. But I would just tell you that we have adopted another philosophy, and I'll share that as I close, and that is if you're humble enough, you can learn from anybody. That's what AURP is about. I hope you will take full advantage of the opportunities here at AURP to learn from your peers. Many of them taught me my first year on the job and have continued to do so. And I thank you all for your opportunity to share some of the things that we're doing at Purdue. And I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.